Hi everyone. So this video is to walk you through your first essay. And your first essay basically does what you've been doing throughout the first few weeks of the course. So you guys have read different accounts of early settlement experiences, ideas, encounters between different peoples. And what you're doing is you're really taking the literature and you're breaking the literature down and then you're contextualizing it with the historical situation and the biography of the authors. So your prompt is very simple. Choose one author that you read in this unit and develop a written analysis of the work that you read from that author in the textbook. So unfortunately, you can't choose a work outside the textbook. But if you have an author that had multiple works, like say the Native Trickster Tales, you could pick two tales if you wanted to and compare them. Or you can choose one singular work. My recommendation for the first essay is to focus on one thing. Keep it as focused and narrow as possible. But if you choose to do two, that's totally fine. It's up to you. So what you're going to do is really break down the text like you've been doing. So you're going to look at elements of the text like imagery, symbolism, characterization, metaphors, motifs, all of these classic literary elements. That's what I want you to spend most of your essay on. And then secondarily, what you're going to do is you're going to be incorporating elements about the situation surrounding the text. So you're going to talk about the biography of the author, the historical situation, and why that work matters. So you're going to be contextualizing the author and their work in relation to these changes which were taking place during this time, the political, social, economic, and or philosophical changes that were taking place and that were creating what we now know as the American, quote-unquote, American identity. So what this means is you take an author like Columbus, and I had you guys read Columbus the first week of the course, and I had you compare him to De Vaca, and I had you really look at how the language that they use portrays certain ideas. So Columbus's language portrayed a certain view of the native people that was very, very different than De Vaca. Columbus's language was very self-centered. He used the word I a lot. He also talked about them as if they were less than people. De Vaca, on the other hand, humanizes them in the text, and that's purposeful. He makes them sympathetic. He makes them into real people that the people back home can read about and understand that they are not less than the white people. So it's really interesting if you break down the text, but then you're also putting it in context with what they were trying to achieve. So why did De Vaca, for example, write in that way about these people? Well, he was part of the tribe. He was, shipwrecked and he had to survive, and so he owed all his life to these people. So that's why his language is very different in a lot of ways than Columbus's, who was a conqueror, who was someone who was coming into a land and taking it for a kingdom. So the language and the audience for each was very different. So this is one example of how you might compare two works. You could do a singular work, but that's how you're really breaking down the text itself and then putting that in context with the biography of the author and the historical context. You do the same thing with John Smith, same thing with Winthrop and his religious movement. You could do the very similar things with the Trickster Tales and how they view particular cultures and ideals. You could also do the same thing with Bradstreet, where you really look at her focus on the family. That's a really important movement, a really important element in the American identity, is really focusing on the family. And she, as one of the first female American authors, has a really significant and important place in American literary history. So these are just to give you some ideas, but really you're going to be making sure that you keep the focus on the text more than anything. And the big question you're answering is, why does this text matter? Why does the text matter? Why does the author matter? Why does it matter that this was written in terms of our larger understanding of what the American identity is? If we didn't have text from Christopher Columbus, that would very much change what we understand to be, quote-unquote, America, or what it is to be American. Same thing if we didn't have Bradford's works or Winthrop's works. So these are really important texts, and I want you to really explain to your audience, which is not necessarily me, explain to an audience why this matters. So a few questions to consider. What does the text do? Why does it exist? What does it do in terms of larger historical impact? So something like Columbus's letters were written to garner support from Spain and to get money to fund the expedition. I mean, to keep funding the expedition. What does the structure, subject matter, or tone show about the author as a time period? How does Anne Bradstreet's discussion of the family, a discussion of relationships and sensuality, go against Puritan religious morality in many ways? What does the text say about the interactions between religion, society, family, identity, etc. during this time period? So what does Winthrop's text have to say about the role of the family, or about the role of society, or the role of women and men in society, or religion and politics? What does that have to say? How did it create this movement that changed and shaped America? How does the work influence our modern perception of history or national identity? I go back to Columbus. We have Columbus Day for a reason, but how does the text show or fit with the idea of Columbus, or not fit with the idea of Columbus that we know? These are all just ideas to kind of help you. So include at least 2 research resources in your work. These should be credible sources. So things like I've been giving you, like history.com, biography.com, PBS, are fine. Nothing like a blog, or nothing like a Facebook post, obviously. Make sure they're credible. Incorporate them in your work. Make sure you cite them correctly in the text. So we use parenthetical citation. And then also have a bibliography. So the bibliography does not count on the number of pages that you were required. So your essay should be 3 to 4 pages in length. So that means at least 3 pages down to the bottom. If you write less than that, I do take off points. You're always welcome to write more, but the goal here is 3 to 4. Double-spaced, MLA, all the usual MLA requirements. And it's due by Sunday, this Sunday, September 24th at midnight. Make sure that when you're writing, you have all of the elements of an essay. So you have clear thesis statement, which explains what your argument about that text is. What do you have to say about that text? Good main ideas with expansion, so you need to give me lots of good evidence from the text. If you're talking about the native trickster tale's portrayal of a particular archetype, then you need to give me quotes from the text that show me that archetype. Same thing if you're talking about the importance of, say, the spider metaphor, symbolism or metaphor in John Winthrop's text. You need to give me the actual quotes and then discuss the quotes. Tell me why the quotes are showing me what you're talking about. So it always comes back to good, solid evidence from the text. And then the same thing with your outside sources. Use those sources in the same way. Pull quotes from your sources to help support your ideas. So minimum page length, again, 3 pages down to the bottom. Proper MLA, which means a heading in the top left corner, a title, page numbers in the top right corner, 12-inch, double-spaced, Times New Roman, Cambria or Arial. All right, and this is what you're going to really be assessed on. So make sure you stick to analyzing the work. I don't want this to become a biography. Don't go into just the life and history of Anne Bradstreet. Focus on the text, and the biography and the history is secondary. It's less important to me than the actual text, that you break down the text like a literary work. So make sure you keep the focus on the work, break it down, and look at the major concepts like metaphor, simile, imagery, all those different things. And then secondarily, the author's identity and the historical context. Good, solid evidence from the text and from your secondary sources. A proper number of resources. Make sure you have 2 and a bib. Your bib, again, does not count as one of your required 3 to 4 pages. It needs to be a separate page. But you can include it in the same document. Just make sure it's the last page. Proper page length MLA citations. Make sure you cite everything. And then fully developed essay structure, including good intro, clear main ideas, conclusion, and then careful and clear organization of all ideas. When you are breaking down the literary text, here are some things that you can look at. Characterization, look at archetypes, look at the protagonist, look at the antagonist, look how people are developed or not developed. Look at literary devices, simile, metaphor, irony, foreshadowing, flashbacks, all these different things. Look at the structure, look at the dramatic arc. How does it follow the introduction, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. the conflicts, so man versus man versus society, all those different things. The point of view, the narrator, that's really important. Remember that in these texts, we have a particular narrator in Columbus, and the way he's portraying people is one view that's very different than other views. Literary concepts like themes, symbols, motifs, allusions, etc. And then the historical context, look at the author, the work, the events surrounding the text, and the ethical, moral, or social issues taking place at the time. So I know that's a lot of information. The point is that I want you guys to have some freedom here to talk about what you feel is important within these works. Again, make sure you keep the focus on the text primarily, and then secondarily work on incorporating information about the author's biography and the historical context. Go back, look at the lectures. If you are confused, the lectures do essentially what I'm asking you to do in this essay. So it might be a good place if you're really a little bit confused about how to combine all these different things together. What I do in the essays is essentially what you are doing. I mean, what I do in the lectures is essentially what you're doing on this essay. So again, if you have questions, let me know. But otherwise, I think you guys will do a great job with this.